Everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Matthew Tillman. I'm the founder of the company. And today we're going to talk about what it means to be touchless in the accounts payable automation space. So with that, I'll get started. So the overall purpose of the company is sort of summed up by this graphic. So $16 trillion more than were spent in 2021 by US companies in B2B transactions, and 12 trillion went unmatched. So that is statistically likely that your company is leaking capital. And we are really excited to solve that problem. So what happens? Well, about 73% of all invoices are never audited. And by audited, I mean anything from a two-way match clear up through to a full forensic financial audit. They don't receive anything. So the sum total of all capital spent on B2B transactions, most of it going through invoices, of course, some in receipts, receives very little attention globally. And this is a major problem, and it's a source of waste and fraud and so on and so forth. About 30% of those invoices have at least one error, and that's an average. Some industries has far, far more. 90% of those errors, of course, favor the supplier. Now, it's not to say that suppliers are committing intentional fraud. It's just very, very difficult with the way that they're set up today, which is what we're going to talk about. There are a few ways to solve that problem, but overall, the buckets of functionality exist today in the market for extraction, to understand the contents of an invoice, the contents of a contract, the contents of supporting evidence is what it's called in finance, to match that supporting evidence with the invoice or the receipt or whatever it may be, and then to provide insights on your supplier efficiency, your supplier fraud, supplier billings, approval chains, things of that nature, just trying to determine, where to look and how to best work with your suppliers. There's a few ways you can solve this problem. You can turn to a BPO, really low accuracy. They are, after all, people, and they often sell people plus tech, but even their websites sort of indicate 86% is sort of their high bar for accuracy as a BPO. And the truth is they are usually just lower cost labor. They're either offshore or nearshore, and you pay them to look at an invoice and sort of check it against whatever they have underlying. Payment networks, which of course are sort of not really set up to save you money. They're set up to help you spend money. They have a bias revenue model, usually charging a percentage of spend. And then finally, there are workflow solutions. Workflow solutions probably the most common actually nowadays. And the truth is, the old joke in AP automation is AP automation is pretty manual. And what we mean by that is it's manual setup work, manual configuration over time. It's a lot of professional services fees. There's a lot of forms, which we're going to go into today. So whenever we looked at AP automation solutions in the market, even before starting the company, previous companies, I was just always really uninspired by the number of manual steps required to automate a single invoice. But workflow engines are very, very common. But today we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, which is the extraction portion of this particular problem. And we're going to start off with an RFP that we received recently, which I'm very excited to show off here. The RFP was really funny to me because it shows just how low our industry standards are, right? Low expectations across the board. Financial teams have very low expectations, and they usually start off like this. So if the goal is to extract the data in your invoices, you submit an RFP to the market and you just assume they all use the same sort of technology. And you say, things like, how many documents does it take to train your machine learning model? Right, which is a really funny question for someone like myself who has a background in computer vision. What is your OCR capture success rate? And that means how many fields are you actually able to capture in that document. And then what is your machine readable document capture success rate? So now what does that mean? That's really interesting. So what do I have to do with setup, with templates, with, having teams draw boxes around things? Do you do that for me? There's really a lot to unpack in these questions. And the things to unpack in these questions are obsolete, right? The technology has far surpassed where we are in this particular RFP. So we're going to go into a little bit of this, and then at the end, we are going to actually answer this RFP. First of all, if you've done any research in this space and you've looked for a solution, you have no doubt seen a solution that shows a website or an installed app that shows a picture of a PDF on the left side or the right side, and then on the opposite side of the screen, it shows you a bunch of forms, which you're presumably required to fill out once they get the digitization portion wrong. And so what you mean usually by accuracy is how much of this work am I going to train my team to do? How much do I have to do? And so you'll read various websites and various vendors, and they'll say things like, we're 92.7% accurate, or 86% accurate, or 90% touchless, or whatever they say. And what they mean by that is you are going to spend some portion of your life looking at forms, but presumably less than you currently do today. And so they really talk a lot about efficiency, right? But the truth is, you're still going to have to train a team to enter data into forms where they got the data wrong because they were using legacy algorithms, or in this particular case, legacy models. So how do we solve that problem? The truth is, forms mean people. That's the one thing we know about forms. Any web form, any software, if it has a form, you have to have a human solve that problem. And people equal cost and risk. When it comes to black and white inputs and outputs, people equal cost and risk. So we took a very different approach to this problem. First and foremost, I'm going to show you a demo right after this slide of how our system actually works. But the overall concept is that we can extract and classify line item level invoice content, and not just invoices. As you might see over here on the right-hand side, there are a number of document types that we can handle without templates, without a supplier portal to set up. Very often workflow solutions will say, if you buy our e-invoicing product and our supplier portal, and you train your suppliers to fill out the supplier portal, and you tell us what all those fields are, and we provide the field mappings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we can achieve X% accuracy. OpenEnvoy does not require any of those obsolete technologies in order to achieve a 100% accuracy rating and 100% coverage, which I'll show you. Handle multiple invoices in a single file, mixed files with some invoices, some supporting evidence, contracts, rate cards, whatever it may be, and works for every style of financial document in this transaction. We also do this with contracts, quotes, bids, receipts, purchase orders, etc. So with that, I'm going to switch over and show you a process. One of our invoices actually being processed. So you should be able to see on the left here, I've got into that, and you should be able to see this is an invoice. This is my attorney's fees for a month. And so I'm happy to show everybody that. And then we have some other invoices, which are sort of non-standard invoices, right? Things that you typically wouldn't train against. And the really interesting thing here is that I'm showing you an interface over here on the right-hand side, which we've created purely for the purposes of showing customers how the process works. Our customers do not use an upload document button, I promise you. They have more interesting things to do with their time. Our digitization system works completely headlessly. So we have entirely gotten rid of forms at the company, and we're very excited about it by this. So I'm going to click here, pick this form. This is the attorney fees. And then we're going to go ahead and digitize that document. And the thing that's happening here, there's a few things that are happening here. Number one is it's going into our computer vision pipeline, and it's running an extraction process. It's going through a field mapping pipeline that allows a neural network to map the fields to the underlying data elements. And then it's going through potentially a translation service, depending on which pipeline and which style of invoice that it is. And we receive at the very end of it 100% accurate data across every field on the invoice and a structured section that shows you every table that was involved. And it's also related each one of these fields and elements to things that can have actions taken on them, I'll say loosely. So classically, it would kick off, let's say a matching workflow where it would go and find the related purchase order, or it would find the related contract if you didn't have a purchase order. It would find the related email if you didn't have a contract or purchase order. But we were not going to go into matching today as much. But now we have 100% quality documentation. Now, you might say, well, that's easy because you've trained it with your legal fees a few times. And so that's not how our system works, but it's forgivable that you would feel that way. So the other thing that we can do is we can take a look here, and I might have to refresh the screen. We can take a look here and pull up the invoice that had occlusion, and it has affine transformations that have to be performed and so on and so forth. And now we have this very unattractive printed invoice. Seems like a dot matrix printer from the 80s was involved in the production of this invoice. And you can see sort of it's laid out poorly, but not too poorly, and it's just shifted slightly, so that's not too bad. But the point is that within a couple hundred milliseconds, we now have completely clean, perfectly accurate data that can run transformations in the background. So, and again, a couple of examples of transformations we do. We take pounds and kgs. And so if you have multiple weights on the same document, we can resolve against that. We can resolve against those weights back to the contract, the quote, or the bid. So it may have been different across each one of those, the bill of lading, the delivery report, the customs clearance, et cetera, the warehouse filings, all those types of things could have been different than the invoice. So we would use that to recalculate in real time. It's really important in shipping and supply chain documentation. But the point is now we have CL number, we have all this identification about this particular invoice, and we have all of the raw data now mapped back and fully normalized to our system so we can run matching on this. And then of course I've got other examples. The thing that's really interesting about what we've done here, in my opinion, is that we perform this so quickly. So it takes roughly around 200 milliseconds to digitize to this level of accuracy on the back end. But most importantly, it's eliminated the need for humans to go in and fill out forms or modify data. So the biggest challenge in machine learning is human in the loop, right? Or man in the loop, or you've heard it probably defined a number of different ways. And the idea is that if it doesn't work, you have a human fix it. So with document data digitization, most companies transfer that work onto their customers so that they can maintain software margins. OpenEnvoy is actually able to perform this quality of extraction and guarantee 100% SLA, have it occur in real time, so that our customers never actually see a screen like this. They just look at the ERP and have perfect data. So without going too much more into that actual demo, if you would like to see a demo of this with your data because you don't trust that we can do this in an unsupervised fashion, that's completely reasonable. Please do contact our sales team. We'd be happy to show you how it works using your data in a live demonstration. We are, I believe, the only company willing to do that on the spot and commit to the 100% accuracy. And this allows us to have touchless extraction, and extraction is a key critical component, obviously, of the process. As I mentioned, it works for a number of different types of documents. It also works for image files. One of the questions that you get a lot are what types of data can you work on? Well, we use a computer vision based model. So we do not rely on invoice metadata layers, which are actually now required by some governments, but they are, as anything required by a government, there are outliers and exceptions, but those don't cause an issue for our style of processing engine. The other thing that's interesting here is ours was not trained on public data, which is very useful. So if you bring us one document and your vendor changes the next month the format, our system will work just the same. You do not have to retrain it, and you do not have to tell your vendor to manipulate their documents. So we have a pretty big obsession at the company with raising the bar for this space. It is very easy to make systems that just tell your customers what to do and then have your customers input more work. It's great for software margins. It's not great for the customers' margins, as it turns out. And so when we looked at this RFP, it was really, really fun because we looked at it and we just said, it takes 0 documents to train our machine reading engine, which is just called a machine learning pipeline. We do not need the reinforcement step. It is unsupervised ML, and I've written several other articles about that. Our OCR capture success rate in percentages is 100%, and we guarantee it. And we're, of course, 100% coverage on that documentation. Our system actually even picks up signatures and says whether or not it's a signature as an example, and can read behind certain styles of occlusion, such as stamps, which are very popular in customs filing forms and things of that nature. So we really went deep on this because the truth is, our customers on average make 12.7 billion a year in revenue. So when you're working for large companies with lots of zeros, it's important not to call one of those zeros an O. So we spent a little bit more time here than most of the companies in our space, and that's because it's really important to get O's and zeros right. If you would like to find out simply how much money we can make you as a company by fixing your data issue first, before even you go into the matching part of the process, please do check out our website, openenvoy.com/ROI calculator, where it actually shows you, headcount savings, efficiency savings, cost savings, all that sort of thing. And please do not hesitate to reach out. I am going to open it up for Q&A if there are any questions now, but I have to escape out of this to do that. But we can spend a few minutes here in Q&A, and if there's no Q&A, we can move on from there. So let me open up the chat is what I'll do here. So everybody can ask questions if you like. I think the other thing I was going to mention as you're doing that, if you have questions, is when we talk about doing something in real time, we mean real time. So OpenEnvoy's data extraction is in sub-second processing times. Our matching algorithm is in sub-second processing times. And so on a later call, a later webinar, perhaps next week or the week after, we'll go through our matching algorithms so you can see an actual match from start to finish in the product. But the really exciting thing for me, and I think for the company, is that every system in this space, dashboard after dashboard after dashboard, with forms that you have to fill out, workflows that you have to generate. And OpenEnvoy is committed to providing 100% touchless AP automation, not just touchless extraction. And so we're going to talk about that in a later demo. And as I see that there are no questions in the chat. Oh, there it is. There's a question. And that's a great question, Rajesh. Does your application extract handwritten data from invoices? Yes, it does. And there are obviously varying degrees on handwritten because of how handwriting works. But yes, it does extract that. It sometimes shows up as Tillman or something like that with me, but the accuracy rate is still pretty high. I mean, missing a 1 or 2 letters on a full name like mine, on a signature especially that looks like mine, is not too bad at all. But yeah, the accuracy rate, I don't know the actual accuracy rate on handwriting, but we can find out. And if you want to have a conversation about it, we can walk you through it. But yeah, we do process handwriting as well. Works really well with numbers, obviously, as you'd imagine, but a little trickier with signatures. But yeah, it's a great question. All right, great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for attending. I really appreciate your time. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out, mt@openenvoy.com. Otherwise, we'll talk to you here in a week or two with the next webinar. Thanks for attending.